Welcome, grade 4s, to WorksheetCloud.com's online lessons. And because today is Friday, I thought of starting this lesson a little differently than I normally start. And I thought I'd share a talent with you, or at least I hope it's a talent. You can decide. And just to give you some inspiration for the weekend and for the week ahead. So, here we go. I can make it through the rain. I can stand up once again on my own. And I know that I'm strong enough to mend. And every time I feel afraid, I hold tighter to my faith. And I live one more day, and I'll make it through the rain. Okay, so that song is sung by Mariah Carey, and it's really been a song that's been sticking in my head for the longest time because I think the experience that we're all going through right now, it's got a lot to do with tough times and like making it through the rain. So I hope that made you smile or laugh. I'm pretty crazy when it comes to doing things that are out of the box. So I hope that it helped you a little bit get through this week and obviously the weekend. So let's get into the lesson. Right, so grade 4s, if you have any questions about this lesson or any of my other lessons, please send an email to grade4@WorksheetCloud.com. Right, so today's lesson we're going to be looking at instructional texts. Instructional text basically tells us what to do. They give us instructions, and we're going to be learning more about that during this lesson. The lesson outline for today. We're going to have a language game. I know you guys are missing sentence a day when I don't do it. But I like to change it up a little bit, grade 4s, because sometimes it can be a little bit monotonous. Please go get the dictionary and look that word up. Okay, so what are instructional texts is going to be the next part of our lesson. And then we're going to recap on imperatives, what they are, and we're going to look at a recipe and directions. Right, so we are going to play a language game. Let's figure it out. So, before I get started, I want you to shout out what you think this game could be about just by those words that I have placed on the screen now. Let's figure it out. What part of language could this be about, grade 4s? I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. So, some of you are probably going figures of speech. And if that was your answer, grade 4s, well done, because that's exactly what I was thinking and what this game is about. So I'm putting a word on the screen now. It's the beginning of a sentence and it is the subject of the sentence. Peter, okay? So I want you to think of how we can start a sentence with the name Peter using figures of speech. You can write it down if you'd like, or you could shout it out. It's fine by me, as long as you're going to think of figures of speech. And for some of you that can't remember what figures of speech are, I'm going to try and remind you now. Remember, we have a simile, which uses as or like in a direct comparison. For example, he is as tall as a giraffe. Or you can say use a metaphor without using the words as or like. It's also a direct comparison, like saying he is a giraffe, which means he's tall. And then you can use personification, which is giving lifelike qualities to inanimate objects, things that are not alive. And you get alliteration by starting every word with the same consonant letter. There are obviously many more. You can use rhyme as well, which are words that sound similar and usually at the end of the sentence. So any of those you can use when you are starting your sentence with the word Peter and trying to create your own figures of speech using his name. So for a few seconds, I'm going to leave it there for you to kind of figure out, and then I'm going to put my ones on the screen. Good luck, grade 4s. Okay, so I hope that you had some time to kind of write down your own things on your page or shout it out, but I'm going to put mine on the screen now. And I am in your way, grade 4, so let me get out of your way. Okay, so Peter Pan peered peacefully into the pretty sea. Wow, look at that sentence, okay? And as you can see, I've used alliteration by starting every word or consecutive word with the letter P. So Peter Pan peered peacefully into the pretty sea. And remember, alliteration doesn't have to be every consecutive word. It can also be a word that is closely related, like peacefully into the pretty sea. How beautiful could that be? And as you can see, the other figure of speech I also used was rhyme. So C and B are rhyming words. And the reason I wanted to do something like this, grade 4s, is because I want to constantly remind you of the work that we've previously covered. Because that's what Sentence a Day is as well. It helps us remember the language that I've already taught. In this way, we can also look at figures of speech and try and keep that in our minds as our lessons go on. Because remember, once you get an assessment, they cover all the content that you're supposed to know. So it's important for us always to be reminded of the things we've already learnt. Our prior knowledge. Another one, please. Another word that I would like you to go look up in your dictionary. There are going to be quite a few in this lesson. So please write them down if you'd like, or if you can remember them, that's great too. Okay, so instructional texts. Instructional texts, what are they? This writing format shows how something can be done through a series of steps. That's one of the most important parts of an instructional text, is that it follows a series of steps, which means that it goes step by step. There is a procedure involved in instructional texts. So please, that's one of the important parts of this kind of text. And then you need to plan your work sequentially. Ooh, big word. Listing the steps needed to complete this procedure. So what I'm going to do is now, as I go on, I'm going to take out my pen, and you can take out yours too. And I'm going to highlight the words that I find that you can possibly go and look up after this lesson, okay? So the word sequentially is one of them. And that word means that things are going to have a logical order, okay? And then begin with an opening statement which states the aim of the text. So if your instructional text is going to be a recipe on how to make a sandwich, and I know a lot of schools and teachers like that topic, your heading or your aim would be how to make a sandwich. And that would be the title of your text. State the directions for the method chronologically. Oh, another big word, and I'm going to definitely underline this one. Chronologically means in the right order, from step 1 to step 2, because if we were working with age chronologically, you'll start with the youngest to the oldest, okay? So that is what chronological means. Then, these directions are given as commands in an impersonal tone. What does that mean? Impersonal tone, and I'm going to underline the word impersonal. Impersonal is the opposite of personal, which means that there is no subjectivity. Another big word, grade 4s. Subjectivity means that I'm not putting my own feelings into the text. Like when you're writing a diary entry, it's about your emotions and how you are feeling. But when you're writing instructions, it's not about how you're feeling. It's the basic steps that you need to follow to make the recipe or find the directions or find the place you're going to. So when I say an impersonal tone, I mean that there is no feelings or emotions used in the text. It is straightforward to try and get a person from point A to point B. And that is very important to note, grade 4. Clear and precise language should be used. So there should be no trimmings. For example, I shouldn't be saying once upon a time or there once was, because this is not a story. It's in instruction. So I have to be straight to the point. How to make a sandwich. This is my ingredients, and then take your 2 slices of bread. Put butter on the one, or spread butter on the one side and on the other side. It's very straightforward and it's very to the point. Technical language can be used depending on the purpose of the text. Now, for example, in directions or working in navigation when you're trying to go somewhere, the GPS will sometimes say in 200 meters you may turn left, or at the next robot, please turn right. Those technical terms like robots and length, okay, that is used specifically for directions. Well, not always only for directions, but I mean for this purposes of this discussion. So those words can be used in instructions, because the purpose of the text is to get you from where you are to where you want to be. And then connecting words such as before, after, next, now are used in these types of texts. So sometimes I will say, after you have moved the spoon, please pick up the knife and cut the sandwich in half. So using those connecting words helps the sequencing of the text and shows how the steps move from one step to the other. And I hope that makes sense, because this is basically what general instructional text should have. But for this lesson, I am going to go into detail with 2 types of instructional text, and I feel that these are the 2 popular ones, especially when it comes to grade 4. So let's move on. Imperatives. I said in the beginning of the lesson that I'm going to do some recap on imperatives. Imperatives was in one of my previous lessons when we looked at verbs. And imperatives are verbs, which means that they are action words. They tell us what somebody is doing and they express an action. They are also known as bossy verbs. So they tell us what to do in a commanding sort of way. And they are usually found at the beginning of a sentence. For example, fetch the broom or sit still. They might not use that tone, but I thought that would make it a little bit more interesting. Anyway, so imperatives are basically verbs, and they give a command or an instruction. And that's what the kind of verbs we use in instructional text, which is why I've included it as a slide. I hope that makes sense, grade 4s. So, the recipe I'm looking at today is going to be how to make scones. As you can see, that is my title. And from my title now, I'm going to put up my recipe. So, over there on this side, you can see there are ingredients. And this is my method. And in the process of this lesson, I'm also going to be underlining the imperatives found in this text. So, what we're going to look at now is the different parts of this instructional text. So over here you can find the ingredients, okay? And the ingredients are important when it comes to a recipe, okay, as an instructional text, because we can't make the food without the ingredients. So before you even start writing, you need to plan, okay? And in your plan you should have, these are my ingredients that I need to make the scones. So over here you can see that these ingredients are listed. From the ingredients, we then go to the instructions, and usually the instructions will be labeled as the method, okay? And what's important is to note the imperatives in this text. So let's go and do that. Here it starts with preheat the oven to 220 degrees Celsius. And it tells you how to do that. Rub the butter into flour until the mixture resembles breadcrumbs. Stir the sugar and the salt. Rub the butter, imperative. Stir the sugar and the salt. So what's fun about this lesson, grade 4, is now that we after we've learned verbs and imperatives, we are now doing it in practice by having a proper text in front of us, like an instructional text. And we can use our knowledge of imperatives now by identifying them here. Make a well in the center of the mix. Make a well. Stir until the mixture is even and the dough comes together. Turn out onto the flavored surface and shape into a rough square about 3 to 4 centimeters thick. Transfer to the prepping baking sheet. Brush oil all over with milk and scone into 9 rough squares. Bake for 15 minutes until golden and cooked through. Cool on a wire rack. Serve. Warm or cold, plain or with jam and cream. So basically, I could now identify my different imperatives in this text. And I've included saying that this is step by step. So as you can see here, I've started with 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So these are my 5 steps to make my scones. Remember, you need to plan your steps when you are writing this kind of text. So I'm just going to circle my numbers so that you can see how it was done in sequential and chronological order. Another question they like to ask is for you to write or sequence the steps of an instructional text. So what they would do is they would mix up these instructions and tell you to put them in their right sequence. So if you wanted to do an activity and to mix them up, that would be the one question that they would like to ask. Let's move on to our next. So the next kind of text I'm going to talk about now is directions. And directions are also an instructional text because it tells us how to get from one place to another. And if you look over here, we now use GPS in our cars or on our phones, and that helps us get to places we're not familiar with. So like I said, it tells us how to get somewhere. And then the reason I've included directions in this particular lesson is because I feel it's very important when it comes to learning how to get to a place, okay? So if we were trying to type in Canal Walk in our GPS, there's still a section on the GPS that gives us step-by-step instructions on how to get there. So I'm going to now look at the imperatives in my directions. And as I can see, it's stand outside your window, turn left, drive straight, take your second right, continue straight, and then stop at the stop street, take your first left, and the shop should be on your left. Now, the important part about directions is that or even instructions for that matter, if you decide to swap out the steps somewhere along the line, things are going to go very wrong because chances are I won't end up at the shop I'm planning on going to. The other thing is that if we have to look at something like changing a tire, for example, if you don't follow the instructional manual, you'll end up doing something that could end up you getting hurt or end up making a huge mistake. So it is important to follow the instructions if there is an instructional manual and you're planning on doing it. Okay, and the other thing that I want to talk about quickly is the tone. As you can see, there isn't, I would like you to turn left, and if possible, could you drive straight? No, in instructional text, there is no emotive language and it's very impersonal and straight to the point. Grade 4s, as usual, this has been a lovely lesson, and I hope that you've learned something from me today. There will be an activity provided for you after this lesson, and if you have any questions, please send an email to grade4@worksheetcloud.com. And I would just like to say that I am not in the habit of singing for just anyone, so I hope that it made you feel special. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, grade fours, and I really hope that you enjoy this. From me, Miss Nicole Frank, have a wonderful weekend further, and goodbye.